Friends, if you're looking for real old school laughs, you're in for a treat because we've got them right here. Flip City Magazine. Remember Mad Magazine? Then it went woke? Well, don't worry. Flip City has no chance of going woke. That's right. 4 times a year, you'll get an actual printed magazine full of jokes, stories, comics, and more, all about today's pop culture, entertainment, and woke politics. Flip City takes terrible entertainment trends we love to hate with hilarious parodies of Lord of the Rings, Stranger Things, The Walking Dead, Star Trek, Hunters, and more. Trust me when I say there is nothing else like Flip City on the market. So subscribe today. It will be delivered in print, or you can even get it digitally if you're one of those wacky Zoomers. Either way, follow our link and sign up today, and if you put in midnight, you get an extra 10% off. Check out Flip City Magazine today. Good evening and welcome to Midnight's Edge After Dark. I'm Tom Connors. We have a panel of Canadians outnumbering the Americans, Clobby.
Whoa, wow.
We're in trouble.
Yeah, they do outnumber us, but we like them anyway.
It's like Spider-Man and Clobby hanging out with like a bunch of Wolverines.
You do know there are 35 million of us amassed at the border. We could cross at any time.
Keep it up, we'll put mirrors up.
You'll put them up backwards, knowing you guys.
Bring it on.
No, this is actually a fair ratio with regard to landmass for Canada and US.
Right.
Yeah, in that respect, I don't know about population. Well,
No,
yeah, it's not
landmass.
about population, but landmass, yeah,
definitely
you're
not.
Right.
We're a tenth of
We
you.
might let you guys have Alaska. Like,
I said we
surprised
got
you guys
why you
haven't
bought
fought
it
for
anyway.
Alaska yet. Like going,
We should
we're
have
gonna
had
take
it,
that
but
from you, eh?
we couldn't afford to buy it from the Russians. You guys could afford to buy it. We couldn't.
Yeah, but now you'll just invade. Like,
Yeah, both of
I
us.
don't know how we couldn't afford to buy it. We the gold rush was here.
yeah,
I
I know.
know, it's just ridiculous that weird that
We're just all sitting here going, "Yay!" Just be glad we didn't buy the whole damn thing. But anyway, good afternoon, everybody. Yes, we have CC Karaoke coming out of Canada. How you doing?
me.
I got a ticket on the wrong boat, eh? I'm going south. Should be going north.
I think that's the thickest I've ever heard you talk with an accent. That's funny. Also, as I already introduced Clobby, how you doing, buddy?
Good to see you, sir. How's everybody doing tonight? My friends on the panel and great people in the chat. Good to see you all.
Well, we actually have some news to talk about, and it's not the Disney stuff that you'd think about, because we already talked about that yesterday on the morning show, and I'm sure it'll be the hot topic tomorrow. So we don't even have to get into any of that. We got enough other stuff to talk about.
Ah,
Cool.
well, good.
Indeed. And we also have Brian, aka 70s rock fan, with us, that Scottish Canadian bastard.
good evening, and all of those statements are accurate, especially the bastard.
I like
can't-
turtles.
You can't move for the bastards around here.
Also, we have Script Doctor, of course. How you been?
Been well. Twitter has been acting up again. I've got delays on DMs. Like
What I've been having is it won't let me retweet or tweet on my phone half the time.
I had the
No.
delays in DMs, and also it would not let me tag anyone who I follow and who follows me. I enter in their name, full thing. It never pulls up to say, "Oh yeah, link to this Twitter account."
That happens a lot now. Yeah, you're DMing with somebody. You've been DMing with them for a long time. You search for their name and it never comes up for it. Comes up with
Yep.
it, and that's very frustrating. It's weird, but just don't talk to people. Then I guess that's the answer.
Yeah, looks like Twitter's scheduled for another big update.
Yeah, I got
Indeed.
another thing for a what do you call it? You might want to check your
Or you want to check our? We haven't updated our user agreement shit again.
Terms, yeah.
Yeah, terms of that's what I was looking for.
YouTube did that too recently as well.
Mm.
Disguising it as more reach for more monetization. That's what they disguise it as. But really, it's just how are they going to screw you this quarter?
Mhm.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to miss my 5 cents of income I get from it.
Yeah, I hear you. We got some. Speaking of, because YouTube takes a lot of this too, guys. That's what sucks. But we do appreciate it because it does keep the lights on here. Holden Hickscock, his cock.
His cock.
Holden
His cock. Oh my
Holden his
god.
cock. Okay.
Oh my God, the cock.
Nicely done.
You got me there, sir. You got me.
Good
All
one.
hail Canada's supreme leader.
That script he's talking about.
You guys would be much better off.
We wish. Yeah.
Yeah.
We
Yeah, you wish.
I'd hate the job, but be better off.
yeah.
Warrior of Justice says, "What connection does the emo and tree have? The rope." Oh,
Wow.
that's a little. Yeah, that's more of a. And Daryl Brewer's been here for 25 months. Thank you so very much. Appreciate that. And yeah, so we're caught up on that business. Let's get into the news since we have a ton of it. Oh, and I also want to thank the individual who sent me the Ninja Turtles 3 figures. I don't know if they want me to say their name or not, so just want to say thank you.
Do you
I
like
appreciate
turtles?
that.
You like turtles?
I like turtles.
I do. Where do we start with all this mess? Oh my gosh, and goodness gracious, blessed be. There's so much to do here. You want to start with the tomatoes?
Yes.
Why not?
Do it.
Well, and this is kind of like the biggest. I've seen so many people saying all, shit since the last 24 hours or whatever this news came out. Everybody's like, well, we already knew that, just a bunch.
I fucking knew it! Oh!
Just as it is in our thumb there. The decomposition of Rotten Tomatoes, the most overrated metric in movie, is erratic, reductive, and easily hacked, and yet has Hollywood in its grip. Not only that, I see a Collider version of this story. Isn't that ironic? Okay, so the basic of what's happening here is this is breaking down how Rotten Tomatoes is broken, proving all the shit that all of us have said about it. All the conspiracy theories are true, down to the point where they paid for good reviews. And guess what your good reviews are worth, kids?
$50.
They paid for good reviews. In other words, where'd that come from? That was weird.
Might have been me fiddling with my.
Okay, that was my voice. Yeah,
my fault, mate. Sorry. Yes,
I thought maybe my thing was running in the background. Like, what's going on?
No, it was me. Sorry about that.
All right, no problem. Yeah, so they would have to pay me a hell of a lot more than $50 script to lie about some of this shit.
Well, remember, these are quote unquote third party PR firms working on behalf of the individual film that's being reviewed.
Yes, and there's more to it than that. See now, yeah, it's more complicated, but yeah, basically this blows the lid off of everything we've been saying for the last few years about it. It proves everything we've been saying for the last few years about it. It is a flawed system. Nobody should trust it. What it was built for has been broken. And Andre, I think, put it best. There's no fixing it. You can't. It's been tainted now. You either have to start over from scratch or just let it ride at this point because there's nothing's going to change.
No, you need a new one because back in 98, 99, when Rotten Tomatoes first came out, it was an awesome place because it didn't just collect all the written critics from the newspapers and some TV shows. You could be your own critic so long as you had an archive to draw from, and you'd have to build that archive. And it was actually a pretty good system for a while until I think it got purchased in 2007, 2008, and then got purchased again. And then it's co-owned by Warner Brothers, Universal, and Fandango.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of it. Like, okay, just a side note, the cope I seen this afternoon on this all day and late last night.
Oh, I've not seen much of that. What's
Oh,
been the
this
quote?
this explains exactly why Man of Steel and BVS got bad reviews.
No, they owned
Oh,
they
Oh my
owned Rotten
they're
God.
turning
Tomatoes
it
while those
around
movies
then.
were coming
Yeah,
out.
well, besides what Script Doctor is
What?
saying, what and there's another thing here. The math don't add up because this is saying that for the last
No.
5 years this has been a problem.
Yeah,
Oh,
2018.
Mm.
Yeah.
okay.
That's
What else
that's
came out in
literally a year after the
2018?
last DC Justice League.
No,
Snyder
this is
film.
ground zero for this shit is pretty much Captain Marvel. Like, I mean, we had
Mm.
issues
Yeah.
with other films prior to this, but we knew from that moment on, when they basically admitted that they were fortifying the scores on that movie, that nothing was ever going to be correct on there ever again. It never was. It kind of proved to
Mhm.
us that they've
Right.
always manipulated the shit. We were just paying attention. Hell, and since then we've had several people, even in my shorts, there's a video that Six caught of basically them messing with the Andor rating
Mm.
because 500 reviews just disappear.
Yeah,
the rating
things
goes up.
disappear. Yeah, that's part of it.
So, like, yeah, it's manipulated on both sides of it. And what we also have here is that there's critics being paid. Now, what you had was funny because this group that they asked about this said, "Oh, that's just the most preposterous shit we ever heard." But yes, there is a select group of people that do actually get paid to do these reviews, to give good reviews or whatever. So many words.
Favorable as opposed
Favorable
to
reviews. Yeah, reviews. So yeah, he admitted to it, even though he tried to claim it was bullshit. And again, like, this is Andre, I think, is planning on doing a video on this, so I can't wait to hear his take on this. But this is just brilliant. Like, I mean, this last week, in fact, this whole show outside of the CNBC article, which we'll probably talk more about tomorrow morning, like I said, so we don't have time for that tonight. But this week has proved to be so bad for Hollywood. Almost every damn thing we've ever said about him has come to be true. I love the backstabbing that's going on because of, and a lot of this is the strikes. This may not have so much to do with the strikes, but a lot of the other shit has to do with the strikes. Our next story has to do with strikes. The story with CNBC probably has to do with the fact that they're on strike. They wouldn't be talking that bad about Daddy Iger, and so on. This is going to get worse, kids, and it's going to be hilarious for us. I can't fucking wait. But this is just like a cherry on top of the cake, top of the sundae at this point. But I'm curious what you guys feel about this. I mean, I know nobody's surprised, so let's get that out of the fucking way first and foremost.
Yeah, no surprise to anybody with half a brain cell. This has been going on for years, but not just on Rotten Tomatoes, and other places too, where
IMDb and other places,
scores and reviews can be manipulated. I mean, we've seen it on social media with troll farms and, you know, armies of paid accounts going out to bolster things or attack things. It's the new way of doing business. It's not really new. Script would probably even back that up. It's not new. It's just done in different ways now than it used to be done. But
well, yeah, it's just well, I mean, it's with what's been currently being discussed in the U.S. courts as vertical merging, and this is kind of a workaround where they try to say that with this merger, they're not actually minimizing competition; they're emboldening it, which is a really straw man argument. But it has convinced a few judges recently, most notably with the Microsoft Activision case. But yeah, since Amazon bought IMDb, the website has not been running the way it used to. It
sucks ass.
Yeah.
But this is sort of,
and they took down the forums too, which pissed me off. And Andre,
oh god, I loved the forums; they were fantastic. So this is one of the bigger problems when it comes to the corporatization of entertainment, because big tech is controlling the narrative of what's being said about their product. So when you have big tech kind of mixing in with the studios and saying, "Hey, yeah, the website that we run for you, you know, you make so much money if you buy this other website or invest in this other website that, you know, reviews the product you put out, you can have influence over how they review it." And it's no different than buying a newspaper, just in the digital age at this point.
Yeah.
That's a good point. And we're also joined by Nick Weiser. How you doing?
Hey, what's up, guys? 70 Script,
hey, buddy.
CC, Tom, good to see you guys. And hello to, well, the most wonderful chat and our wrenches, Goddess, D-Bud. I see you guys. And there are wrenches. Hello,
looks
to
like
you
we're
all,
getting a pro
Mecha
raid
J.
as well.
Yeah, and we're getting a pro raid. Oh, that's huge.
Nice.
And well, it's nice to get some confirmation on stuff that people like us have known for about half a decade now. So
Pretty
yeah,
much, yeah.
let's carry on the show. Let's get this convo rolling.
Yeah, and we noticed it with, like I said, Captain Marvel was kind of ground zero or whatever.
That said, that was what got me to
Yeah.
start paying attention to that stuff. Was exactly that. I remember because I thought
The Last Jedi is another one that really.
Well, yeah. I see. The thing is, they didn't really alter the score with The Last Jedi for the audience.
They didn't have to because
low.
Disney altered the score by paying people with. See, we already knew this because people were being paid in other ways other than actual cash. Like what they're being accused of now is basically payola, right?
Right.
Before they were being paid in access, or at least in our understanding, or we were giving them the benefit of the doubt. They were being paid in access or goodie bags and other perks and things to kind of butter them up.
Yeah.
And, we started noticing because of all the buzzwords and the way that they would come out and defend these movies. Of course, Ghostbusters is still ground zero for all of this, but we really noticed the manipulation. And as they said here, for at least 5 years now, and that seems to be about right. And that would be right around the time Captain Marvel came out.
Yeah, the same cut and paste messages pasted into reviews. The same wording,
well, that would be
the same structure.
Yeah.
And it really was copy and paste. 70s is right. Like it was all copy and paste. And they were all like, then they changed the critic scores to top critics, all critics. They were adjusting the settings. And then there used to be the metric of looking forward to. And it was because of Captain Marvel that they took that away, because I remember the scores really low on their looking forward to. Oh, no, we got to get rid of that because we can't decide for people to not look forward to it. I was like, really? They're doing that trash? Go on, 70s. Sorry.
No, not at all, mate. I was just thinking, you made me think of something. But Tom mentioned earlier payola. It's an interesting word. Payola,
well, it's the same thing.
Because it's the same thing. And payola, for those who don't know, was back in the 1950s. Certain major rock and roll DJs like Alan Freed were accused of being paid to play certain songs and certain records. And this blew up into a whole scandal called payola, which brought down a few careers and caused quite a few lawsuits and changes in the law. And it was a big deal at the time. And this is what that is.
I brought in The Last Jedi because even though that predates the 5-year package and what they're talking about here, it kind of doesn't, because you could still kind of figure that might fall in that purview, because that's when I remember that one critic coming out and flat out saying that they know that they're giving these movies false reviews.
Last Jedi was 2017, wasn't it?
Yes, the end of 2017.
It was.
And that's right at the 5-year mark.
I should point out, by the way, I'm not defaming Alan Freed because I'm not accusing him specifically of ever.
No, there was a lot more people than him involved, but that's one person you can.
And he was still an influential DJ in the history of rock and roll, if not the most influential.
Probably one of the most famous people
so
implicated in it. But
no disrespect meant to Alan Freed as a person.
But no, that being said, it's the same kind of thing here. You have. And this is where I was legitimately saying it. It's one thing, okay, you can wine and dine somebody all day, but unless you actually have something where something is changing hands and they're under the understanding that they're supposed to give this thing a favorable review, outside of that individual, the name escapes me now, but he'd said it on that one podcast where he flat out knew critics besides himself that had been influenced to give good reviews for Star Wars The Last Jedi. Otherwise, they were afraid they wouldn't get access and all these other things to future events and whatnot. And that we already knew, along with goodie bags, and we already knew some of the other things we had seen when, everybody's calling it a triumph or, whatever buzzword they would attach to this said thing. And it's obvious. Like, it's like, do you really think we're that fucking dumb?
I know.
I may be a gullah cow, but I'm not a gullah bull. That's for sure.
Nah,
there's no trustworthy aggregate right now. And growing up, Roger Ebert was my go-to. I trusted him. He was the first review I would read when I wanted to see what new movies were coming out or which old movies I wanted to watch. So, I mean, I think we probably all do have somebody we trust, but as an aggregate, we don't have anything for that. We don't even have ourselves. And I was looking today, Starfield is a recent game that's been very, very divisive. People love it and they hate it. So there's no longer a 5 out of 10. It's not even just about the professional critics. It's about us too. As soon as the user scores unleash, were allowed on that game, you just see this massive flood of everyone giving it a 0 and everybody giving it a 10, right? So the early user aggregate was 5 out of 10 because you got these zeros and these 10s just clash.
It's probably in the right place then.
That's exactly it, CC. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, Nick. And then
no, you're good. You're good. I miss the days of Siskel and Ebert because even when I didn't agree with them, I liked it when they disagreed with each other because it always made for good clashing of conversations. And they were never afraid to disagree with each other. And boy, did that make for an entertaining show. I love that. And there was a time I used to pay attention to stuff like Collider. And then once again, like The Last Jedi was like the thing I'm like, okay, something's off. But then Captain Marvel was like, okay, something is for sure off with this. Because the fact that they're changing their metrics around the movie. Oh man, and that's why I started to stop trusting reviews like that, and it was unfortunate because and that's why I even stopped trusting to a small extent audience scores because even though like I trust them more than I do a critic score nowadays, the problem is that when I started seeing that they're changing the metrics of like all critics and top critics, and they decide who are those critics in the audience score. I took big exception. I'm like, oh, this is really weird. I don't like that stuff. And it's like they're selectively choosing who gets to make the score and the audience score. And it still protects things that they want when you do that system. Either one, and I'm of the mindset, let everyone speak or no one speak. There's always going to be bad takes for every single thing in the world. But you know what? Eventually, the good takes, whether it's a positive or negative, are always going to weed out the bad takes, good or bad. And then what I mean by good or bad, I mean like a good review or bad review. You could have a bad review, but it'll make sense. It's very thought out. So that's hopefully that clarifies.
You're not wrong, and that kind of goes off of what Brian was saying about the whole there's no in between anymore, right? There's there's either it's a flat out 0 or it's a 10 out of 10. And that even goes with the critics
like
too.
An authentic review, right, Nick?
People
like
personalized
everything.
Yeah.
That's right, Script. Exactly that. I want to just keep it authentic. Like,
well, and that's what
I just want to know why someone comes to the conclusion that they like something or don't, or even if they just find it average. Even if I don't agree with them, I can at least try to understand their position, why they feel the way that they do.
Well, and that's fandom, and you're right. There's no way around that. But all you can do is hope that at least the other half of the people that saw it are not going to be that extreme. And then as far as trusting critics you can find, well, that's where I think YouTube is, had its, where we have benefited from that. I'm not even going to deny. But Goddess of Whim brings up Siskel and Ebert were laughing in their graves. I don't know. I think Ebert would be very disgusted.
Oh, yeah, he would.
Yeah. I think he'd be extremely disgusted with this shit. In fact, he would be writing a scathing, op-ed on this whole thing probably right now if he was still with us, because he would say this is the end of the the end of the critic, and I am appalled to see this happen in my lifetime. And I'm glad he actually passed away before he got to see this shit.
I imagine he would have been saying that for years now.
He would have been, because that's the thing is
we're paid to write reviews by publishers, not by studios. Like that would be his differentials. Like you,
and
that's
that was why
they
they made sure that when Disney bought them, that's just so this is full disclosure, and they made sure everybody knew this because they got bought out by Buena Vista Television. They said on the show, not even just in like some report, they said we want to be full disclosure with you guys. We are being bought by Buena Vista, just so you guys know, because we're going to be full disclosure with you. Buena Vista is Disney. But at no time do we expect, or will we take any influence from Disney? And in fact, that was part of our contracts, that they are not allowed to.
Well,
they made that pretty clear. I mean, I'm paraphrasing, but they said this all on a show once to make sure everybody knew with full disclosure that they are now owned by Disney, but they are not going to be giving Disney favorable reviews and and all that kind of shit. And I trusted them in that sense, because that was a big deal for that to be a stipulation in their contract.
Well, I think Siskel and Ebert would take the view that they and their predecessors in the what we would term criticism, and that would go back to books and theater criticism before movies, come from a line of literary criticism. I hesitate to use the word academic, but that's what it is. They would see it as something that's worthy of doing in its own right, not just living off the product that's being reviewed. So they would see this as the debasement and commoditization and corruption of that art form in a sense. So I think they would be disgusted.
Well, and another part of this, I believe they get into the whole fact of how like some of these reviewers are easily manipulated is because they've had to open the doors to diversity. And it's like, do you not even hear what you're saying, right? You're basically taking away, and this is where Ebert would say something too. And I think this is one of the few times where he would sound awfully base compared to what he used to, because he used to be very, in fact, to the detriment of some movies in his reviews, I would say, based in his certain political opinions.
Yes.
That's a good example among other ones, like how they went after Friday the 13th and all that stuff. But real quick, I'll finish this up. But it's like, he would have said that this is not how you make movies. This is not how you review movies. I have a Pulitzer Prize, and I'm the only reviewer who has that for a fucking reason. Because we are, as a critic, it's a hard job to do, and not everybody is equipped to with it. I'm not trying to make it sound more important than it is, but I am seeing more and more and more reviewers in the last 30 years after, and since Ebert's passing, more so, that have no reason or rhyme they should be a fucking critic. And I get it. See, that's the thing. When Ebert first started and those guys first started, they weren't taken seriously at all. The critic job was literally thrown to whoever that week had extra time on their hands. And Roger started doing it just because he liked it. And he eventually became the critic all the time, and he ended up winning the Pulitzer Prize and all this other shit. But other than that, outside of Siskel and a few other critics, not very many of them were ever really, quote unquote, respected. So he fought for that respect, right? And he made damn sure that you knew who he was and where he came from, his background, his integrity, and all his everything intact there. And Siskel even the same way. As much as they disagreed, that was one thing that they would always see eye to eye on, is how important it was to know the history of film, know what makes a good film, know what works for the audience, works for yourself at the same time, but be able to call out your own biases. Well, see, that was one thing that Siskel and Ebert never did shy away from either, is saying, look, I know this is not going to ring with most people, but I fucking liked Cop and a Half. And then you got Siskel going, you're a fucking moron, Roger.
Yeah, they would attack each other. But
I watched that one recently.
Yeah, good critics like them will debate and attack each other, but I don't recall them ever attacking the audience directly.
No, they didn't even admit when they get shit wrong. In fact, that would be like a thing annually.
They hated the movie. They may have said they hated the movie, but I don't know if they ever said you're stupid if you like this movie.
As a matter of fact,
no, they don't do that with the audience. But here's the big difference between Gene Siskel and Roger Ebert and today's critics, and that is most of today's critics don't take the Ebert or Siskel approach when it comes to analyzing and dissecting films and regarding their opinions. What they do is they take the Leonard Maltin approach, which is I will say whatever I can to get into the good graces with the filmmaker at a time. And every once in a while, I'll say something stupid or reveal an honest opinion, but I'll end up backtracking it within a couple of years. That is what we see more often or not now with film critics these days. They take right out of Leonard Maltin and not enough out of Gene or Roger.
Yeah.
You were about to say, Klobby. Yeah, I think I know one. I think you're referring to times they may have called the audience stupid.
No, well, for some reason, just a couple weeks back, I don't know what happened. My feed has been filled with Siskel and Ebert videos. So I've been watching. I see it. They go, oh man, let me watch that. The old ones, And I used to really love that show. So I've been watching it and listening to it a lot recently. And I've heard them basically when they were. I hate horror movies. I don't hate them. I hate that teenager movies as much as they do. And they're not just, hey, if you like them, fine. We don't. No. They were. If you watch those shows, them tearing them to pieces. They weren't just tearing the thing. They weren't just tearing the movies to pieces. And the
they were after the audience for those. I knew that was where you were headed.
Which, by the way, I don't do, even though I can't stand those movies. But I'm saying back then, they didn't give, and they were giving their opinions. They think if you like some of this stuff, there's something wrong with you. And
I would have. And that's why I hedged what I said, besides their few opinions on things like Friday the 13th, because the only pass I give them on that is you got to remember what era they came from and the way they saw that. Yeah. And again, I'm not giving them a pass. I'm just saying I understand where they're coming from, but I agree. They went completely off the fucking rails to the point where Roger himself was one of the original doxers that I ever heard of. Because dumb shit, like an idiot, went and put what's her face's address in his review. I just forgot her damn name. Jesus
What
Christ.
movie?
Friday the 13th.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Betsy Palmer.
Betsy Palmer.
Put her fucking
Yeah.
address out there so people could write to her.
That's crazy.
It's like, dude, should know better than that. If Sean Cunningham, it'd be a different story.
Sean Cunningham was the director, so yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
why her? She's just an actress.
Exactly. And that was and I think he apologized for it, but that was the stupidest thing he ever fucking did.
Again, showing they weren't perfect. I love them, and they weren't perfect. I didn't even agree with them all the time, but they definitely. In fact, it's interesting if you watch some of those shows they did about these types of films. They did special episodes all the time about this kind of stuff that they were really concerned about. They were the first. Some of the phrases that we hear now, and we laugh at from the SJW types and all that kind of stuff, like "you hate women," "you hate," all the cliches that we laugh. Yeah, well, I must hate women. We would throw it back at them. Well, if we didn't like that movie, you must hate women. They were saying that stuff, and they were meaning that stuff.
Yeah.
But at the time, were they wrong? Were they right? I don't know. But they were actually using some of those terms.
No, they absolutely were. And I think Roger came around a little bit later on. And I think he realized at that time that they were being a bit overzealous or whatever you want to call it.
But there wasn't quite reality where they would say, look, you guys are making stuff that's pretty disgusting and we don't like it. But they were actually out. They were like they're out there, sort of like the crowd that says blames violence and everything on video games. They were like that about movies sometimes. With some of the, with I Spit on Your Grave, that's a movie that made by and knows that genre people who hate women. Well, they don't know those guys that were making the movies. I mean, certainly I'm not defending those movies. They just generalize it. Well, if you made this sick stuff, we think it's sick. You hate women. I mean,
but they come from that wave of feminism, though, where that was. I can see why they got that from. Yeah.
No, I understand absolutely. I'm just saying that those guys, and yet, with all that said, my biggest point is they were still, when push comes to shove, they were not shills in any way. They showed, I mean, they were fun to watch because you could tell they loved movies. You could tell that they just loved the art form, and it stood out that and they were, at the end of the day, is it a good movie or not?
Yes, that's true.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is they loved Halloween, but for some reason just didn't get half the other stuff. And some of it I can understand. And I'm not going to just sit there and deny that there wasn't a bunch of that stuff that came out in that era that was purely exploitative, right? Absolutely. And that's fair, but to the way they went after it was not fair. But that being said, all the Ebert stuff aside and the Siskel stuff aside, Rotten Tomatoes has always been rotten. We've always known that. And I don't think there's too much more to say on that, unless there's anything anybody else has to add to.
There's one thing. It's one thing to pay people to push up favorable ratings and put favorable reviews for your movie. The second part of the whole thing, though, is the deplatforming and removal of negative ones, and that's an entirely different thing, even more insidious in my opinion.
Yeah, that's a good point.
That's the other practice is the removal of any negativity because you don't like that, and that's been going on too. So, that's even more evil, I think.
I think we also run into a factor where businesses can start off well, and then when there's a change of management eventually, and you see that with Disney, Walt Disney himself had a vision for the company, right? But eventually somebody had to replace him, and companies do not become always where they started. They do fall off. And we mentioned Collider. I got into Collider and then I fell off of them after John Schnepp died. I don't know if that was specifically the reason. I don't know enough about what went on behind the scenes there, but you do see that companies do not end up where they began, and a lot of the time it feels like they're going in the wrong direction.
Absolutely.
IMDb being another example of that, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm. And we've recently heard about some of their manipulation and stuff too. So, we got Pro in the house. How you doing? He says, "You mean Rotten Tomatoes is rotten?" I'm shocked. I am too.
Smell it from here.
Yeah, we could smell it right away. And thank you for the raid, Pro. We appreciate that. Tripping Orc gifted 5 memberships. Thank you for that, Tripping Orc. We have Pinochet, who's been here for 2 years. Happy anniversary. Happy anniversary. Happy anniversary. Happy anniversary. Happy anniversary.
Smoke weed every day.
And we got I Cthulhu in the house who says the FTC is right now taking comments till 9/29 to find these companies for bought reviews. Oh, I did not know this. Why not take time to publicize this to your audience? Well, this is the first I've heard about it. There you go. But I don't know how many people are really going to come forward, but
I wouldn't hold my breath for the FTC or any similar organizations to
don't.
do anything about this. No.
Do not. Seriously, it's not going to end well for you if you hold your breath.
Yeah,
It
if
really
you're
will
expecting them
not.
to do the right thing, then,
expecting them to do the right thing.
forget about that.
They're the type of people who seem like they are brought up on the mentality to not do the right thing unless it's convenient to do so.
Yeah.
Let me tell you about Rotten Tomatoes. It stinks. That was my Jay Sherman.
Sounds like Jay Sherman.
Today I'm going to be reviewing Home Alone 10.
And ultimately, the best reviewer is yourself. You need to. Only you can make the final judgment on anything, and anyone that's swayed by a massive score for a movie or massively low score for a movie,
or buys a movie because it has a fresh Rotten Tomatoes score.
Exactly. Do your own. I mean, there are all people we personally trust when they talk about things, but even then we don't agree.
Yeah.
But,
you're not going to agree with any one critic on every
No.
single thing ever. That is,
Well, we don't even
that
agree
would
with
probably
each other.
actually say more problems about the person listening to that critic versus the critic himself, because you gotta, it means you have no actual thought for yourself. I mean, I listen to what's his face for a lot of reviews, even if I don't agree. RMB, good example. I listen to a lot of his reviews, and there's reviews I strongly don't agree with, but I listen to it because I want to see where he articulates his argument. Like, I guess the best example would be Eternals. Obviously, he was a fan, and I've obviously made it very clear. I'm like Lobby, it's the Eternals for me, but I still listen to just see why he feels that way he does. So yeah, it's good to listen to contrarian arguments. It really is.
You never know. They might
from people we trust. Sorry, go ahead, CC.
No, you had a bit more formed thought than I.
That was script. Sorry, script. Canadian accents also.
Oh, you racist!
Except mine. That sounds different. I completely forgot my train of thought now.
You deserve it.
Sorry, sir.
For being such a racist. Well, I'm going to read this.
Sorry, I was going to back Nick up. He's saying there are people we trust because we either know them or we've watched their stuff for a while. And I'm talking mainly of YouTube because where we get a lot of our stuff from. That, yes, like Nick, I will listen to them. It doesn't mean I'm going to agree with them, but I will listen to them. There are others I wouldn't even go anywhere near. But ultimately, the judge is yourself. Go and see it and judge it for yourself. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, the other part too is you never know. Someone might get something from a film that you didn't realize was there. They might articulate why it's there. And you're like, oh, I didn't see it that way. The other part too, and this is what always frustrated me, especially not just in high school and film school and then later in the industry, is I've encountered so many people on the independent circuit who, if a movie gets nominated for an Oscar, they immediately like it. And it's like, that's not a good aggregate for taste or quality. And it shows desperation to just be part of that system as opposed to saying, no, I want to set something new. I want to push some boundaries a little bit. I want to try something else that can make some waves to prove my value, improve my ingenuity. And instead of, no, I'm just going to make the same thing over and over again. And what do we had for over Hollywood for the last 8 to 9 years? The same thing over and over again. So we need some more push in the other way.
And there was another point I was going to make about Siskel and Ebert, and I just I remember it came back to me now too. Speaking of remembering things you were going to say before, despite them in their few times they did go after the audience for like the horror movies and stuff, they would actually take the audience into consideration, and they would, I don't know if they did it annually, but I know they did it every once in a while where they would do like, maybe we got it wrong kind of show. I can't remember the exact title of it, what it was called, but so they would go back and re-review movies, and sometimes they would change their reviews. And it was generally predicated on either the audience making the movie a big, huge hit, or Gene or Roger saying the other one got it wrong. So they would, give it the second chance kind of thing. So at least they give them that,
Oh yeah, I've changed opinions on movies and
Yeah.
such things over the years. Has anyone not? I mean, maybe they have. Maybe I'm the only one, but
Oh,
I
yeah,
have-
I do that
I've
with music
changed
a lot too.
opinions
I've done it.
on movies,
Yeah.
shows,
Music
albums,
especially, yeah.
comics as
Video
well.
Comic,
games.
movies.
Heck, you know
Yeah.
what? When Final
Yeah.
Fantasy VIII came out, I hated it, and now I love it. 25 years later. I mean,
There's
Yeah.
yeah, there's a few things, and you're right, CC, because music especially, like there's a lot of things that
Oh yeah.
when I was younger I wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole that now I tolerate a hell of a lot more.
I've had times where there's like a comic or an album that I like from a certain artist or writer, and I absolutely detested it. And then I'll go back, 5-10 years later. I'm like, you know what? Hey, this wasn't as bad as I truly
Yeah.
thought it was. And then
Mm.
there's things where I loved it. I'm like, oh, maybe age didn't do as much favors to this one too.
Well,
That's
speaking of
happened.
music, 70s rock fan has to leave us here. So thank you
Unfortunately,
for
I
being
do.
here.
Well, no, thanks for having me, Tom. And I would just urge everybody to ignore opinions on the internet. However, if you want to leave a like and subscribe to Midnight's Edge After Dark, that would be good.
Please do that.
Yeah.
Do check out
Not-
Brian's channel though too.
Yeah, check. Yeah. If you don't mind, have a check.
If
out
you
of my
don't
channel.
mind.
If you don't mind,
If you want to help the Scottish idiot out.
if you want some stuff about music, classic rock, Korean movies, and some other nonsense, then that's the place
Yeah.
to go. Korean movies, great example of me listening to people saying, you should watch this stuff. And people I
Yeah.
trusted and go, oh, you're right. This is really good. So,
All right. Take care of
Yeah,
yourself.
thanks, Tom. Yeah, you guys have a great night and
See you soon.
cheers. Bye.
Take care. Yeah, I was trying to remember. I think I watched this review not too long ago, and I think this was one that they did re-review because I think Siskel actually liked it, if I remember right.
Mm, I
And
love that movie.
yeah, because I think I remember if you're right, because I was kind of surprised. I figured it'd be the other way around when I watched the review
They never
like,
got
oh.
together on which one? Sorry.
on UHF, unless they both
Yeah,
hated
that's
it.
right.
But
No, I think you're right, but I think they both like it now. Or changed to liking.
I don't know if he changed to liking it or not, because I do remember at the time watching the review here, I'm like, God, I would have thought Roger would have loved it, and Siskel would have been like, it's childish bullshit, and it was like the opposite, and it was like Roger was just, I don't know if he had a bad day or what, like, he was just going on. It's like, dude, do you hate Weird Al or what's your problem? Yeah, because I remember he was a bit harsh on it. Yeah.
They never did get back together on Cop and a Half, though. I don't think.
No, nope. Siskel would not break on that one, and I can understand that one. There's a certain point where Gene would give on certain things, but not like on shit like Cop and a Half. No fucking way. No fucking way.
I love that when they argued about it both times, like in their recap. I mean, the first review, then later at the end of the world movies, year's worst movies.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the dogs of the year and stuff. And then they just change
Yeah.
it to year's worst or whatever. But like,
Yeah.
that's the thing though, is even though there was times where I wouldn't agree with either one of them on certain things,
It's fun to watch.
the best part about it is no matter which one you agreed with or disagreed with, 9 times out of 10, whatever reason they went with was pretty much in line with what you were feeling. And with me, it was kind of weird the way I watched Siskel and Ebert, because
Yeah.
it became a tradition when it first started on PBS and stuff like that, and then moved up to their early syndication. I actually got to watch it on like Thursday or Fridays when I was a little kid. And then when they got bought out by Buena Vista and they moved to their other syndicated package, I didn't get to see the show until Sunday night. So it became a ritual for me for many, 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 many years
Wow.
to watch.
Wow.
My parents would watch the news or whatever. As soon as news was over, Siskel and Ebert would come on Sunday nights, and then after Siskel and Ebert, it was Star Trek: The Next Generation. So for a while, that was my routine, and then they switched from Next Generation over to 2 episodes of MASH. But regardless, still Siskel and Ebert was the mainstay, and every Sunday night that was my thing. And and it was kind of weird because especially when I started getting to go see movies on opening weekend, so I'd see a couple of these movies sometimes before I'd see their review. So I was coming to their review already having my pre-made opinion about the movie. So that was kind of the cool way I kind of watched it sometimes in that respect. But I know that's kind of a stupid thing, but it was just kind of neat to see which one would agree with me or which one would disagree with me, or if they would both agree with me or disagree with me. Yeah.
I don't know if I ever actually went to a movie because they said it was great or otherwise or went to be. But
I can
did.
say
Maybe it
yes,
happened a
I
couple of
did.
times.
Because Ebert was really good up until I discovered like Chris Gore and Film Threat and all that kind of shit vicariously through Kevin Smith. And it was because of them. I think I heard of Kevin Smith to begin with. Ebert was the one who turned me on to is actually my ground zero for any indie stuff, because he would always make sure that if something was coming on video that he didn't think got enough interest in it or whatever, he's the reason I saw Slacker. He's the reason I saw Clerks. He's the reason I saw Pulp Fiction. You know, it was because of him talking about them that brought them to my attention. So, and he saw a lot of those times, those are movies that he would actually see before we would, because of course he was always going to a lot of the indie circuit shit, all the festivals and everything. In fact, there's a great video out there of him in a great speech he gave at one of the festivals where he was, I can't remember what he was bitching about, but he was just one of those guys where everybody listened to him when he talked. He was like a god when he would come to some of these screening things that they would have, the festivals and whatnot.
It's, you know, it's funny. They're just talking about old movies, and it's so entertaining. Just when I see a video flash by, and I'm not doing anything, you put them on there. It's like it brings you back to another time when the whole thing was just about movie criticism. But whether you agreed with them or not, they were always so great to watch because it was just fascinating conversation and their personality and great personalities. You know, I really love those guys.
And all their shows had great theme song.
there was a few years there where I must have rented almost every movie in the video store, and I would take like a whole evening and I would read Ebert's reviews, all his archived reviews, all his new ones. I would just read and read and read, and then I'd go to the video store and rent 10 movies and watch them. And he got me like his 4-star review of Dark City was the only reason I even thought about that movie. And Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. He raved about that movie. That got me into.
He was one of the few critics who actually liked that one. Yeah,
I didn't like that. He didn't like. One of them didn't like Die Hard.
I think that was Gene.
He loved Die Hard too.
No, it was Roger.
Didn't he?
Yeah, Gene loved Die Hard too, which I actually agree with him on. Roger didn't like Die Hard.
Yeah, I think you're right.
One of them loved Die Hard too.
I think they both liked Die Hard 3, which I think made it up.
Yeah.
So
Die Hard 3. Yeah.
Actually, they both liked 2 and 3. They didn't, but one of them, Ebert was. I don't know if he gave it a thumbs. I think he made thumbs it down. He had some problems, but weird. I mean, but yeah.
Yeah. But anyhow, let's see what else you guys are saying in the chat. We got Pinochet's Helicopter Tours just says, congratulations. Now to the end of time, you can point to this article and factually accuse the industry of being liars. Falsus in uno, falsus in omnibus. Yes. Probably said that wrong, but thank you. Jim Watari has been a member for 14 months. I'm not real up on my Latin. So Wolfwood says, why doesn't Hollywood want to make money anymore? Yeah, well,
got all they need, I guess.
It's the thing is they've always made everything off of spending other people's money, so they make money and they still make money. It's just I think the problem now is they're running out of other people's money and their own money. So
I mean, Hollywood has rarely been profitable annually.
Not really.
Mean, it's just the way it is. You make so much stuff, most of it is not really mass appeal. And you have to get lucky with a couple of mass appeal hits to cover your losses of all the failures you met. It's a very risk-taking industry, and in recent years, they've been trying to mitigate that risk, and as a result, they're narrowing the amount of potential hits they get.
What they're doing, though, and this is the best analogy I can come up for this, I don't know if you guys agree with this or not, is it's like they found out that they had cancer, and the only treatment they found is also killing them. Right. So and you got to think of the superhero movie is what they think is the cure, but it's actually what's really killing them at this point. This idea that they put in $250-300 million into these movies and they'll end up bringing back $2-3 billion or at least $1 billion is not something you can rely on. And what Script was talking about is back in the day, the movies that would keep the companies afloat was always the surprise hits, right? The occasional Police Academy or the Revenge of the Nerds or something that cost absolutely nothing to fucking make, but just made bank. And that covered almost all their losses on anything else that was big. And once in a great while, you'd have a bigger film that would hit, but it would barely make any money, like you were just saying, Script.
Well, if a studio had any movie that crossed $100 million, that was good for them.
That used to be the $1 billion mark, yeah.
The other part, too, is that again, it comes down to negligent accounting. Accountants tried to figure out an arithmetic where if you spend X amount of money, you're guaranteed X amount of return. And that's not how this industry works. Never has been, never will be. And what's terrible is that so few are actually paying attention to it. Now, when it comes to the superhero aspect of things, there's only really 2 studios making superhero movies.
Right. I was using that as an example. What happened is that spread to the rest of the industry, and that's why Mission Impossible cost $250 million to make, or whatever other insert.
That's more of a Tom Cruise and Ralph McQuarrie.
Well, I'm just saying it's something that's
yeah.
spread across, but everything you have nowadays, except for the occasional film that actually manages to be under $100 million, which is rare. So rare that we often talk about it, but yeah.
How many of the Rock films, that not including the Black Adam, cost over $100 million?
Exactly. That's the thing.
Not many. Even the Fast and the Furious films, only recently did they start breaking their budget over $100 million. They used to be very low budget films, with the exception of Sony, who has been trying to rein in their budgets on their quote unquote super. I mean, they're not really heroes; they're super villain movies.
Tom Rothman knows how to mitigate that shit over there.
Yeah,
at least.
He's still functioning under the old school stuff, based on the earnings report that Warner Brothers released recently. Seems like Zaslav wants to go in that direction too, which is also a good sign. Paramount, Paramount's learning the hard way right now that they can't be throwing the big bucks just after the big names. They have to actually rein those guys in, because yes, Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 1 did not perform what they were hoping for at all, and there's no way they're going to make up with it in Part 2. I don't think. I think they'll be lucky.
Even if it was a roaring
make
success,
the same.
it wouldn't.
It would not offset the losses there. But the only again right now, this when it comes to the studios and their behavior, they're following Disney's lead, and Disney's lead is actually headed down,
killing them. They're the lemmings now.
It's basically what it is. Like, as I've tweeted before, as I've said on this show and other shows, Disney as a valued company should never have a value of more than $22 a share for their stock, because that's Disney's sweet spot. That's
Thank you. They've overinflated the industry. That's the point I was getting to, Script. Exactly that. Because even a movie like, for instance, okay, if you look at it at the scale of, let's scale the 100 million to the billion now. That's astronomical and bullshit. That's the problem, because the problem with that is since in the last 20 years, the cost of making a film has gone down astronomically. No longer do you have to deal with film prints, distributing film, all that kind of shit, developing costs, all that stuff that was some of the most expensive parts of making a film have now been washed away. A lot of that has been taken off your shoulders. For some reason, though, as I always point out, Hollywood will never spend less. They always find a way to spend more and make you pay for it. And that's exactly what they have done in the last 20 years. And they've gotten themselves into this corner now where even a movie like Sound of Freedom, they fucked up on, right? Because it only cost $15 million. That's what these movies should and could be costing. And that's where I'm saying the inflation model doesn't add up.
No, it does not. And it hasn't added up for a long time.
Like that, exactly. If you can still make a movie like that, of that quality, of that caliber, I'm not talking about the actual subject matter. I'm talking about how it looks.
Yeah, mid-budget.
Exactly. When you can't, what is their excuse? Why can't you make a movie for less than $70 million?
It's not that they can't; it's that they won't, Tommy. I think you're giving a little bit credit, too much credit what they can.
Well, it was more of a rhetorical question.
I get it, but I had to capitalize that. It's that they won't. They always spend more, like you said, and we're the ones who end up paying for their trash. That's it's just one of those, they want to have all their advantages and none of their consequences. And this is one of the biggest issues with Hollywood. And I hate sound like I'm wishing failure on people, but the thing is, Hollywood needs to learn what it feels like to have a little bit of failure. I'm not saying go all the way there out of business, never to come back, be serious,
right?
But they need to feel a little pain to see like they're not invincible, and they need to make changes too, because a lot of ordinary people have had to make changes and had their taxes being taken away because of this stuff. They need to learn to bleed a little, that they're humans just like us. Well, I'm just saying they need to be put on equal footing and not be held to the different standard that they've always been held.
Well, the irony is that the industry is loaded with failure, and that's just the way it functions.
But they get bailed out, so and it ends up not being.
They can get.
We don't get bailed out.
Well, I mean, recently they got bailed out because of a government that is not very trustworthy, which never
Yep.
should have done in the first place. In the traditional sense, studios always got built up by actually having a really good movie that came out. And here's the other part too that's very difficult when it comes to entertainment is that
Shoot.
because it takes so long to make a movie, the attention to what the audience likes, gravitates towards, changes so quickly that you can't predict it. And they've been trying to predict it. They're
That's
always
exactly
going to
it,
be
right.
behind
Never
the
the,
try
the
to do.
McDonald's the McDonald'sization of everything.
Yep.
They're analyzing community trends. They're trying to
predictive, yeah.
analyze what
And
people
what's sad
want, what they
about
like.
this,
But you're
CC
always going to be behind, right?
And what's sad about this, CC, is at this point, they're behind still to a point. But not only are they behind, they're way off than they ever have been. It's like, even though now they should technically have their finger directly on the pulse because you've got Twitter, you've got social media, you've got Instagram, you've got all these things. You've got fucking YouTube where we've got 740 people right now, plus the people on panel, all discussing in this matter, right? It is out there. There's people out there. Anyway, point being is like, yes, it's just ridiculous. And if you don't make something that people want to see, if you have all these, you can have all the statistics you want in the world, right? They should be able to statistically make a perfect fucking movie with everything that they can pull from the ether, from all the internet stuff and all the, but
Yeah,
guess
they have
what?
more
Script is
resources
100%
than
right.
ever.
The problem is you're that far. Every step you get so much closer to trying to turn it into a math, you get that much farther from what it is initially, and that is it's an art. It is a form.
And trends are not timeless.
No,
They're year by
trends are
year.
actually
They go for maybe a few years.
Sorry, I went a long way around to get to my point there, but
No,
that's just
you're
it.
right,
It's like
Tom.
you cannot take the human equation out of the matter. And right now, that's the one thing that the writers and the actors should be saying and screaming in the fucking face of these fucking studios and in the media and stuff. And they are. But they need to prove to us that they're worth a shit script. That's the problem. And I'm not, present company excluded in this matter. But that's the fucking problem here is you're getting zero sympathy from us. We're going pshaw more so than normally because we don't really give a fuck. Before we kind of like, yeah, it'd be nice to have a new episode of Frasier to watch. But right now, there's nothing of a new episode that anybody gives a fuck to watch. They don't care. Yeah. Sit on your fucking ass and hold up a sign. We don't care. That's more work than you've done in years. So
well, actually, by the way that the industry works, yes, sadly, the picketing is more work than a lot of people have done in years because a lot of people don't get hired. I mean, again, it comes down to taste and analytics. And here's the other part too. Social media isn't real life. The vast majority of them lie about what they like on real life, so it's a terrible aggregate to use.
Yeah.
One of the things that when you actually take a look at all the movies, the biggest hits of the last 100 years, and all of them do have a lot of things in common, which is that they're written to be stories that are reflective of the time, but talk about broader concepts of humanity. And that is your simple formula for how do you make something that can resonate with people. The other part too is that when you make something that's so specific to a mass audience with regards to their wants, it becomes disposable because it's not about what's needed or what they like. It's about what they want at that moment. And when you get something that you want right away, you don't really cherish it as much as when you have to actually like kind of work for it or earn it or are blown away by a discovery. And that's kind of the issue that mostly the heads of studios, the ones that came out of these very prestigious colleges in business and in accounting and management and all these other things that have nothing to do with the creative endeavor are trying to crack. They're trying to crack the creative code. And guess what? You can't, because it's not a code. It's an instinct. It's imagination. It's all the things that you cannot tabulate on a spreadsheet.
Yeah. Script, you also brought up a really good point, not to bring it all the way back, but I think we can talk about something you brought up earlier while bringing it forward. But you're talking about how they have all this tribal, they want to try to set the trends for the things for what people like. And I think that's also a big issue. They want to decide what people should like, and usually it's also be that the market decides what they like and good, but it seems like they don't want to be it that way. They want it to be that they decide what the market gets. And I think the best example of that, and this is not exclusive to movies, is something like Captain Marvel. Between movies and comics and all other mediums that character is involved in, she is obviously not done well in any of these mediums. I mean, technically the movie did do well for what it was worth, but she has not been well received since. And they want people to get them to like this character, and people are not responding well to her. And rather than just admit defeat and say, okay, we got to try something else or a new character or another thing, they just keep doing more with that character. I feel like that's probably the textbook's example that history is going to look back on of what happens when you try to force an audience to get behind something and they reject it even harder. Is
Well, it's the
Captain
William.
Marvel.
Well, what you're
No.
talking about is like the William Randolph Hearst thing. And that is, if you can control what people like, you will always have you will always sell your product. And that's what
Yes.
Hollywood wants to do because it's so easier. And when it came
For
to
a few
something like
days.
Captain Marvel, they really lost the plot of what they could do to make this a compelling character. I would say
Oh,
the
yeah.
cast is perfectly fine
Mhm.
overall. I mean, aside from the talking points that Brie Larson made, I think a lot of people could ignore that if her character in that movie was incredibly charming and likable and worked
Yes,
within the story.
I do agree
They'd
with
be
you.
like, okay, she's being dumb here, but at least she can actually deliver a performance that makes me forget that she's being dumb there.
Yes,
We
that's
didn't have
actual
that in the script.
escapism.
Yeah, we didn't have an actual script for that. But that's basically what it comes to business. And this is something that you can see in fashion brands all the time. I mean, that's what fashion primarily does, is it tries to manipulate
Exactly.
people into thinking exactly what it is they'd like and what they should be wearing so that they can make an easier sale than taking in feedback about what is comfortable, what is interesting, what is the choice of the people. It's breaking the main rule of supply and demand, which is that if the demand is there, you figure out your most effective way to supply that demand, and you don't try to manipulate what the demand is because people have individual ideas and individual tastes, and that's why it has to work the way it is.
And I agree with you, Script. I just want to push back. Oh, go ahead, CC, because I know you wanted to say something earlier too.
Oh, I was just going to add to that, but I mean, the trouble is, I mean, when they're trying to create trends to create the next Baby Yoda, but you're always chasing it, and by the time they do it, people move on to something else. But at best, you can create this system where something is relevant for, like you see a movie comes out and it has that big first weekend, and that's because obviously you have some really dedicated Marvel fans and whatnot. But things that are not relevant in a year, or especially in 10 years, it's like pop music lately has this down to a science. You have this specific kind of generic creation that'll get tens of millions of views for a couple of weeks, and then nobody remembers it next year because it just doesn't have any lasting power. But I mean, if you want to really like make money, you want something that's going to have lasting power, like Disney did in the 90s, right? By creating these new characters, these new IPs that will last for generations, not just for a few weeks and then sputter out and die.
Yeah, and I mean, I just want to not really push back on something you said, Script, but kind of take a different viewpoint on it. I agree with you to the most part that, yeah, you got to know that Twitter isn't real life and all these other things. And that's kind of goes along with what my point is going to be. And that is, I think it's actually you can do it. You can actually, for the most part, and probably be pretty accurate considering, look at all of us and all the stuff that we've been doing for the last few years and stuff that we've predicted and how right we've been in most things. It can be done, but you have to be able to analyze the material, not just take it at its face value. And that's the thing that a lot of these folks in Hollywood are doing, is they're just looking at the numbers. Like Parrot Analytics is a great example of that, of where it just tells you what you want it to tell you, not what you're really needing to know. And that's the problem, is we can actually go out there, look at it, realize, okay, people are talking about this thing, like say Star Trek Discovery, but they're not saying I love Star Trek Discovery. We can clearly see with our own eyes they're saying I hate Star Trek Discovery. And you can even test the grounds in certain other ways, and we do those things. Now, is it an exact science? Fuck no, but it's a hell of a lot better than what they're doing with their quote unquote exact science, is my point. And I don't disagree with anything you said either at that side, but I'm just saying I don't think they have the right analysts involved, and that's another human factor. It's like Hollywood is continuing to try and go down the same path that the music industry has gone down. And I just don't even see why they don't see the warning signs, because the music industry is basically dead.
Oh yeah. Well, they don't have enough time. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Hollywood is so busy. Everybody's days are booked. Schedules are constantly being shuffled around and changed hourly, that nobody has enough time to actually stop and smell the roses anymore. That's why Hollywood needs the independent sphere to come in and inject new life in there. You need someone that has been outside of the system, that is still able to connect with your general audience to come in, give a sort of an upgrade or a reboot of the system, and then that happens every so many years to keep the system fresh and to keep them on point. The moment you start keeping them out for immutable reasons and you bring in the people that fit other reasons but don't have any of that experience is where you get into the situation that we're in now, where you're like, oh, we found a shortcut to trying to get this new revitalized energy in the industry. Why isn't it working? It's because you literally took a shortcut as opposed to looking at the people that worked their way to your front door. Instead of the ones that are like at the door knocking, you're looking out the window across the street and you see some guy just walking around aloof, be like, you know what? That person fits the demographic that's really trendy right now. We're going to hire them, as opposed to the guy that's at your door saying, hey, I've got this script. I've got this pitch video. I've got all of these things. I've got connections to actors, talent, blah, 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 everything for this great little movie. And you're looking for the guy across the street who would love to be in the industry, but doesn't know where to start or begin, but just happen to be nearby.
There's a finite number of screens available, right? And when they're all being absorbed by the major corporations pushing out these McDonald's summer blockbusters, that they're taking screens from better quality products.
And that's where it's about time it happened to the studios now with Sound of Freedom and doubly so with Taylor Swift.
It's karma finally catching up.
They are going to learn that these, as you just said, CC, that there's not an infinite amount of screens, and they're going to have to start making shit that the theater owners and the theater goers are going to want to see, right? Because otherwise the theater owners are going to be like, fuck you, I don't need to take your, Blue Beetle 6. I've got a Taylor Swift concert here that I can show instead that'll fill the auditorium. Why would I book that shit again?
Years.
Yeah. Well,
everything okay there? It's not like
Sadie's barking.
No, the model is way too bloated, and even if the situation, let's just say, gets solved with the writers, directors, and the actors, all that, even if they solve it now, I don't think they're gonna solve it. So it's gonna be solve it with the illusion of, oh hey, look, there's gonna be a side thing that you won't catch several months to years down the line. And that's how these things play out, sadly. And then people are like, oh crap, how did this backfire me? Well, there's always a fine print that a lot of people don't look at, because a lot of people, and this is everyone on the board, everyone thinks way too short term about things. They just want to solve the problem just to solve it, which theoretically sounds good, except when you're too emotionally invested, and you could get advantage of. And I think all of them kind of take advantage of each other, and they don't actually.
Imagine that the fakest, fraudiest people in the fucking world work in the one industry where your whole job is to play pretend.
It's a match made in hell.
It's a match made in hell. Exactly.
It's crazy. But the other part too, the one thing that's kind of, I think, causing the studio heads to be in a panic unprecedented is the fact that for the first time, we actually have a team on the negotiating committee that is paying so close to the details that it's been frustrating the studio heads. Like that's something we haven't had before in maybe 55 years.
Yeah. And you guys have been making
or I was just saying, we saw something similar happen in video games. In the 90s, it was affordable for everybody to take their shot at developing a video game, right? Because we were back in the 16-bit era.
Yep.
And you didn't need hundreds of millions of dollars to produce a AAA title. Now, you got lots of crap, but you got lots of amazing gems too. And then as time went on, you had this greater disparity created with these bigger budget titles. We'd see that in Hollywood with like Marvel films, these hundreds of millions of dollars of AAA films. But people still buy into the low budget stuff. You say, like in video games, a 16-bit game that's done really, really well still sells and doesn't cost nearly as much money to produce. People will go and see a cheaper film, like Sound of Freedom, for example. If it's a great product, people will see it. You don't have to spend hundreds of millions of dollars producing it. And I think there's real value to getting back to that, especially since there's probably just all kinds of talented artists out there. There's probably so many great movies we don't even know about. because
Oh,
they
yeah.
haven't reached.
Oh
the
yeah,
surface.
obviously, yeah. We talk about that all the time. Yeah.
There's so much hidden talent that we don't know it's out there, and that's why I'm hoping. Like, I mean, and it probably won't happen anytime soon. I'm hoping there are people down the line, whether it's I guess you could say the good writers, the good producers, they say, you know what, hey, we got all this talent here. Why rely on the studio? Let's go make our own studio, and we'll put out our Sound of Freedom equivalent. I'm not saying it's got to be like a religious movie. I'm just saying whether it's an action movie, a horror movie, any genre, whatever genre, even the
The
romance.
big hurdle
Make their own
there.
studio and say, you know what, we don't need to work with these people.
Well,
Operate
Jason Blum did
outside
that.
of them.
Yeah, Jason Blum did that. And now he's part of the system. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, then
The
don't
exception
pay
there is
to the-
Angel
then
Studios, though,
don't
and that's the
pay
thing,
to
Nick.
system.
Well,
Don't
no,
pay
no,
to
no.
it.
I get you, Nick. But here's the thing: is Angel Studios and Sound of Freedom only worked because Angel Studios had already established itself with its, making inroads with the whole
Industry, yeah.
religious angle, right?
Mhm.
So they already had a set up kind of audience that they could sell this movie to, and that's why Sound of Freedom did as well as it did. Not because of them so much. It was going to do okay because of them to begin with. It's because everybody else besides them went too, but that buzz got the ball rolling, right? And this was one of those films that was a little different than the typical Kirk Cameron film or Left Behind kind of movie, to where people could find this more accessible than your standard religious film. And the last time you had this was like the Passion of the Christ, for instance, is a good one. There's a couple other ones that have kind of squeaked through the cracks. There's one like God's Not Dead or something like that. It was a series of films that did really well, and some other ones, but they don't.
The Hallmark ones, right?
I can't remember who was exactly behind them, but I think even Angel Studios, if I'm not mistaken, was the distribution behind them. But regardless, the point being is that they have built themselves up to this point where they could sustain something like Sound of Freedom. But we did notice that they were, they had to deal with certain issues with the industry and it was very easy for the industry to disrupt them, right?
Well,
Be it,
that's
rogue theater, people, or people with the media and all the bullshit spin they put in this movie. Like, yeah, that's the uphill battle that anybody making anything independent or doing something outside of the system is going to have to go with. Not only do you have to have the backing and the kind of money to do the advertising they have, you also have to put up with them trying to take you down at the same time with the very tools you're trying to use to let everybody know about your movie. Sorry, I just want to finish that.
No, I think that's the trick I've noticed with like YouTube, for example. I mean, when you really think about it, we're barely I mean, YouTube's been around for more than 10 years, but really we're maybe a decade into this process of independent creators growing on platforms like YouTube. And once you got hundreds of thousands of subscribers or millions of subscribers, and you see some of these channels self-funding, and some of them have been successful, Ripperverse, but YouTube still does. They are still in control, right? And they would have the power to decide who has success. And I do wonder, like, because we're so we're still at the very, very beginning of this. You need more than 10 years, right, to create this, to see where it goes. Where are we going to be in 10 years from now? Are we going to see more and more independent creators be able to create their own platforms to have that success and start to push into the market? Or how much will they be repressed? By exactly what you mentioned, Tom.
I don't think you're going to get repression in the same vein that you'd have with the trades. Not talking about a movie like Sound of Freedom. I think what you're going to have here is basically a byproduct of oversaturation to the point where if there is good stuff out there, it'll be too difficult to find because everybody will be making something.
Are you saying like small successes, but more not as mainstream?
I'm saying it'd be I think that with the amount of saturation that's going to happen as more people get into the creative sphere, it's going to be, the small successes are going to be far more rare because there are going to be so many of them out there that people are either going to be overstimulated with the amount of choices or pigeonholed into an area of something that's not going to be big enough to warrant, say, repeat business or repeat output from those creators. Because everybody's going to be drawing from the same pool. And the only way you're going to stick out is, number one, if you have a lot of quality, number two, you have a lot of reach. And to make a lot of reach on a platform, especially like YouTube, unless you have one heck of a good hook that can sustain itself for a year or plus, it's going to take maybe 5 to 10 years for you to actually reach a distribution level that if you do something originally creative, say like making a movie or any other product, that's the only way it's actually going to be profitable for you and sustainable.
I've noticed that with music too. I mean, back obviously in previous generations, you couldn't simply go to the store and buy what you need if you have the individual talent to mix great music. Today, if you've got $1,000 or a couple $1,000, you can go and get the gear. If you have the talent to know how to mix the music, then you can do it, right? So that there's just an absolute deluge of amazing music out there that's completely buried, and it's harder to find as a result of it. You know,
I don't think it's gonna be that bad, and this is what I want to add to that, CC and Script, because and CC, I think you're on something really good, the music aspect of it, because yeah, the successes would be smaller and not as wide reaching, but I think you could still have some advantages to that because you have less middlemen involved unless you choose to add those to it. But you could still potentially get more bang for your personal buck out of the direct audience that you do have. I mean,
oh no, that's
one
not
band.
a point of contention though. The point of contention is reach. In the earlier days of
and
YouTube,
not everything needs to have that. I think
curation
it's fine
used to be a
that
thing,
not
right? Like,
has that.
yeah,
I
like radio stations used to be independent and they could find music they loved and play it, and then it got bought out, and now there's just a handful.
Yeah,
of
that's where you used to have a lot more.
And,
Sorry.
and I don't think that's limited to music, because that's why we see it with Disney buying up all the companies and
contrast.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let me take you back to the dawn of YouTube, because in the earlier days of YouTube, the odds of you getting a video that reached 1,000 were incredibly slim. Do you know what the correlation was if you were to get 1,000 to 10,000 views on a video on YouTube? How many Facebook friends you had? That was it. If you had 1,200 Facebook friends, you could guarantee at least a 500 to 1,000 view YouTube, which would then get it onto a trending page in the earlier days of YouTube, and then it would just grow that way. You always needed a third party aggregate, a third party reach in order to drive an audience to another platform. That is still true to this day. If you are on Instagram right now, you have 7 million followers, and you do a YouTube channel tomorrow, guess what? You're probably going to have at least 500,000 subscribers before the end of that month.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to discourage anybody who's trying to do their own thing, but that's the problem with sometimes when you get these individuals who will launch like a campaign for a book or something, and then they'll try and become a YouTuber. It's like, no, you're putting the cart before the horse now, buddy. You need to. This is why people who have been able to be successful have been successful, because they built an audience first, then they did the other thing, and then they were able to build and build and build. You got to be able to have the it's no different than in the movie industry or any other industry with that respect. Is you have to have the backing, but it's not so much like even movies is worse than music, because CC made a great point there. Is like back in the day, even 40 years ago, even still in some places you could even have regional breakout hits and artists come from like the middle of nowhere. Then all of a sudden it became, no, unless you went to like either Seattle or Nashville or LA or New York, you weren't breaking shit.
Oh, and that's once again
YouTube changed that
wide audience. You don't need to have that wide
and
audience.
YouTube changed that. You do, but you don't. Like, yes, you can.
It depends if what you're striving for. If you're looking for a dedicated audience that's engaged, but it's not, because you gotta remember this: the more wide-reaching your audience is, the more normie it gets. If you have a small but dedicated audience and you make enough to where you make a living, like a good band, you probably never heard of them.
Yeah, if you can sustain that, great.
They made a good living off their music, and they had no management. They're self-managed. They're called the Dillinger Escape Plan. Whether you
they're one of the best bands of all time, man.
But they knew how to play the game. They knew how to do business. They say, okay, yeah, it's good that we know how to be creative with our music, but they also learn about business, and they cut so many middlemen out because they play the game. And they're not a big band per se. Like, they're the type of bands that open up for larger acts, but they're not a wide-reaching band. But they made a living off their music because they knew how to play the game. Now, obviously, if you're trying to reach full success, that's have a bigger story. But not everyone needs to have those reaches. And I don't think, to be fair, I don't think every artist needs to have that or should even want that. If you happen to get that, the market will decide that, but not everyone's meant to have that.
And YouTube and social media has changed that. And that was kind of the point that Script was getting to. And that's just it. Unless you were somebody who was lucky enough to get on the ground floor, of this thing, you got to be like, like Taylor Swift would be one of those people who got in kind of on the ground floor. Insert your famous YouTuber here, got in on the ground floor. But since then, for every Billie Eilish we get, or somebody like that who breaks through the YouTube into the main sphere, or the new recent redheaded guy that sang the Rich Man and Rich Man or whatever, like
Oliver Anthony.
Like for every
Him
one
turning
of
down that
those, there's a
money was
billion
smart.
other people trying that are failing. And you're right. If you can get yourself a nice little following that sustains you and you're cool with that, and you don't have the type of bullshit that most people have to deal with, and you can afford it, that's great. I mean, like, that's the thing about being a YouTuber in the sphere, the way what we're doing here, as opposed to me working in radio or in business as I did before and such, and other similar like avenues, is that it's a bit more I'm direct with the audience, right? So it's a totally different thing. And this is where it's changed for independence compared to what it used to be. And YouTube is that thing that you're talking about, Nick. That's your only, like, YouTube and social media are your only two real platforms. But the key to that is to either have an audience of your own or get the attention of somebody who has an audience, like Critical Drinker. You get what I'm saying? It has
absolutely.
to be, you
Absolutely.
still, the biggest barrier between the audience and everything media related has everything to do with people hearing or seeing it, right?
Oh, of
That's
course.
the thing.
It
Getting
makes a
an
difference.
advertisement in front of their face is
I
one of the
just wanna-
hardest things you can do.
I just want to add here because I see FKH in the chat saying a YouTuber like Mexican Iron Man. The thing is,
The
you
best.
don't need to have 1 million subscribers.
No, you
No,
don't.
no, you don't.
We joke
Not
about
even
Mexican
close.
Iron Man, but he's in the 80th, 90th percentile. You only need a couple 3,000 subscribers in that sense. I mean,
No, and I'm not trying to
it's,
discourage anybody. You're absolutely right. It's culture, or I almost called it culture.
Sorry, no.
I've
noticed
sometimes. That's why. You're right.
I've noticed
CC,
this
like,
searching
yeah.
for music, like artists who have 2, 3, 5,000 subscribers, they're able to go on tour.
Yes, and they survive off that tour
yeah.
because they know how to do business, not just be creatives. Because that's and that's something.
It's
that
also a lot
translates-
cheaper to become a musician than it is to make a movie or a short
Of
film.
course, but I mean,
yes, it is.
you
But there are
can.
some
There's a difference
translations.
between being worldwide and being able to make a living.
Absolutely, that's the thing. And again, I don't want to drag this debate out anymore because it's a great conversation, but we're losing some of the audience. And Wolfwood, you got your $2 worth out of that. Coach O'Dragon says, so how about the Disney stock, eh? Is Iger hitting the showers already? Oh, where's our favorite YouTuber? I know he's on the case checking in on Bob. Well, I know if he was able to make it, he will be here. I haven't heard from him yet today, so I'm assuming he's still swamped in dealing with A, no internet where he was at, and B, client stuff. So I didn't expect him today, but I have a feeling we'll discuss this a lot more on tomorrow's show. So I'm going to save the Disney talk for that. Besides, we already got like 2 other stories to get to yet, and we're way over time now. Way over time now. But thank you, Coach O'Dragon.
Yeah, we got off on
That's what
different
happens.
directions.
When
Yeah,
that
Action
conversation
Com-
gets too engaging.
Yeah, ActionCom says the S&E show was called Take Two, and they used it to backtrack on Alien. Yes, and I think you sent me that in the background. That's awesome. Thank you, ActionCom. And yeah, I watch Ebert and Siskel and Ebert quite often. Whenever I get a few minutes, I'll throw them on or in the background when I'm working on stuff sometimes. Yeah. Araxis says, or he's becoming a YouTuber. Thank you so much. Or she. I'm assuming it's a he. My bad. Gonzalo Bergali says, we got a famous quote down here that totally applies to Hollywood. The numbers don't lie. The people making them do. Exactly. And yes, you can say my name, Tom. Okay, well, thank you, Gonzalo. And I'll show off the folks what you got me here in a little bit because I might open them in the show if we got time yet. If not, I'll open them sooner or later because actually I got 2 now. Somebody else also got me one so I can open one. So I'll look at the boxes and I'll compare which one looks the best. And I won't open the box that looks the best. And I'll open the one that doesn't look as good. But thank you so much, guys, for that. And Gonzalo and everybody. Appreciate it. ActionCom says, during the CD-ROM era, there was a CD called Cinemania. It had reviews of Malton, Kale, and Ebert in searchable database with photos and clips. Did anyone else have this, or did you wait for IMDb website? No, actually, I'm glad you brought this up, ActionCom, because I was going to bring this up earlier, but everybody was, we're getting pulled in 20 different directions. Ebert was one of the first people to really have a presence on the internet. I don't know if you guys realize this or not, but when I first got on the web, there was very little you could do outside of look up like a couple of websites of like businesses and stuff like that. You had IMDb, but it was really primitive, and some other stuff. But Ebert,
I was lucky. I had the internet like in 1992. And then you're right. That's how I found him, because he was actually there.
and what he had done was he started his own website, and he loaded up. He had been recording all the shows up to a point when he had first got a VCR, and he'd been loading up all the reviews online, and they were really crappy QuickTime video clips, but he had done it all himself. And it was amazing to see that shit, because back then he was like one of the first guys to really do that. And then Kevin Smith was another one I remember early on, because when I get on the net, there's very few things you could do. And then I remember Ain't It Cool News was another thing that was one of the first big websites I used to venture a lot, besides View Askew and a few others. But yeah,
That was a terrible website.
it was, but it was one of the only places we could actually get
Yeah.
entertainment news back then. And it's not like it was now, where Variety and a lot of other stuff was accessible as it is now.
Well, yeah, the trades took a while to get on the internet. That's for sure. There were a lot of GeoCity sites that actually scan the trades
GeoCities.
from LA and put them up.
Yeah, I think I seen that in a few forums and other places, but yeah.
I read HTML for Dummies and made a GeoCities website once. Oh, hey, my video game got like 5,000-6,000 downloads back in the day.
Yeah. But yeah, and I did have Cinemania too. It's funny you mentioned it. I have not thought of that in years. And yes, didn't they also have, with photos and clips? I was going to say, they also had trailers and stuff on there too, which was cool. Because back then, it was hard to get your hands on a trailer for something, like an actual trailer, unless you were lucky enough to have a video that had the trailer on it for something else at some point. And then, you got lucky. But like back then, finding a trailer was like digging for gold sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because a lot of times you get, just the video trailer, not the actual trailer.
Yeah.
Now on video, speed.
Other than Siskel and Ebert, the one thing that was invaluable to me was Leonard Maltin's book. We get it every year, just about the updated version. That was a must.
Did I ever? Were you ever on one of the shows where I said I'd read his entire? I think it was what year?
No.
I want to say 94 or 95 or something like that.
Holy crap!
From cover to cover, and I went through and marked all the movies I had seen and put my rating next to them. Marked the ones I wanted to see, and that was how I'd become an encyclopedia. I've forgotten so much more than I remember, because back then I would like constantly get called up from work, and I was the only guy who was probably not afraid to answer the phone call from work. Even, of course, then we didn't have caller ID till a little later, but like, it'd just be like, yeah, what do you need? And be like, we need to know about this movie. It came out a couple years back. It's got so and so in it or something like that, and it's about this. Oh, you're talking about the da 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 da. Come on, da 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 da. And I don't even know if we had it in the store.
MSC3K used to constantly make fun of it. For example, they would be one of their movies that they would be doing. So this movie has a higher rating than, and according to Leonard Maltin's book, it'll be something that's like a fairly well-respected, like the top, well-loved movie. Like, for example, the incredibly strange creatures that stopped living and became mixed up zombies gets like 2.5 stars or something in that book. This movie has a higher rating than Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, for example.
Or Temple of Doom, I could see, or something like that. Yeah.
Heresy. But anyway, yeah.
Yeah, Leonard Maltin was not one of the most. Sorry, I think he's still with us. He's not one of the most consistent or best reviewers.
I don't think he did all the reviews
in the room with the guys that made movies. That's it.
Yeah,
he didn't do all the reviews in his books. There's no way he could have.
I don't know. Given the quality of the reviews, I think he did.
I don't know.
There's some in there that are head scratchers. I haven't looked at the book many decades now, but sometimes you go like, wow, that's ridiculous. That's way too.
Well, my understanding is a lot of them are just truncated version of his actual written reviews, and then.
Well, yeah, but still, man, that's a lot.
And they were called the video guide, because that was the whole thing. Is it would tell you if it was on video, Laserdisc, or not.
Right. They weren't really reviews as much as the video guide, but
yeah, it was that was the perfect thing for me, because it had all the tidbits I needed. Had the title, had the year, had the rating, his rating, and then it had a few of the stars, a really quick synopsis, the running time, whether it was on video, Laserdisc, and that was it.
Right. It was pretty cool though.
And if there was another version of it, if I should see something else, and like if you're looking for this or see this for the sequel or whatever, blah 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 blah. Sometimes he would throw those in there, but yeah.
It was like the comic book price
guide. Or you would say that's a sequel to, sorry.
Obviously, it was like the comic book price guide. You had to get it every year. Back before they just, before your comic books have other ways of pricing them.
Yeah.
Like the Overstreet comic buys, like every year, 1 year. It was kind of like that.
Well, it's because he'd actually update it every year. Yeah.
Yep. He's updated.
Yep. Araxis says, wait. Are you saying that you can't create artistically by committee? Shocked face. Well, you can, but you still need a visionary. Right? And in this, the way they're doing this. Well, yeah, it depends on the kind of committee. That's very true.
I mean, if you have a couple of auteurs together that are in sync, yeah, you can make something beautiful with them. But if you have people that aren't creative, that's more of a tug of war. And then if you have nobody that's creative in there, then you
have the Marvels.
Yep.
Yeah. Which they are very fortunate. There's no competition for that movie
now. Yeah. Sorry. Anyway, we've got a couple more stories here I'm going to buzz through. This one actually just came in. This is a bit of a breaking news, so I get to use the breaking news. We now know who may have been the lead in the Quentin Tarantino critic film, the movie critic.
Oh.
But as of right now, of course, you can't do shit because of the strike. But
can't say anything. Yeah.
Paul Walter Hauser.
Oh, cool.
Offered the lead role.
Nice.
For those who may not recognize him offhand,
of
course,
nice.
Cobra Kai.
Stingray from Cobra Kai.
Stingray,
yeah. The guy who eats beards.
He was the Exodus fan, which for me was awesome to hear. I'm like, dude, straight up name dropped Exodus. Hell yeah. Stingray.
So yeah, that's a little bit of breaking news there. It was kind of neat, I thought, for a second.
It is. I agree.
Is Tarantino's critic film a period piece or is it contemporary?
I think it's supposed to be a period piece set in the 70s, if I'm not mistaken.
Sweet.
From my last from last I recall.
Oh, this is great news.
Here we go, kids. Pop the corks.
Time to celebrate.
Yeah. Sha-na-na-na. Sha-na-na-na. Hey. Goodbye. We can't spend as much time on this as I thought we would, but yes, Bad Robot, aka J.J. Abrams, Greg Berlanti, Mindy Kaling, Bill Lawrence, and more overall deals suspended by Warner Brothers TV. That means they have officially closed the door on Bad Robot at Warner Brothers.
Nope, that's not what it means. That's not what a suspension means.
Well, it does to me because this is not coming back.
Well, here's the thing. They're suspended, but they haven't been terminated yet, which means that their roles this is a suspension with regards to their roles as producers, not with their contracts or deals. This means that what they've been doing for the last 3 to 4 months in regards to developing stuff without creative teams, they're no longer being paid by Warner Brothers right now. They're basically saying, nope, we're not investing in these things right now. Come back to us when the strikes are done, and then we'll talk. This is not the same as a force majeure. Don't conflate those two. They're not out yet, unfortunately.
I recall you mentioning a couple months ago.
I don't want you to.
I know, you're right.
Well, what happens when they start coming back? You're like, well, they thought they were fired. I'm like, they were never fired. This is a suspension.
JJ ain't coming back. That one I can say for a fact. Well,
JJ, we already know that his $500 million deal was technically renegotiated and it's not terminated. But he still has some products with Warner Brothers that have not been terminated yet. So he was still able to collect a check. Now he's not collecting a check, but he hasn't been given a pink slip yet. So we can only cross our fingers that's going to be the case, possibly if this strike goes on beyond September. The timing of this is very interesting.
Do you think there's a desire to use the strike as a culling? You were talking about it a couple months ago. I don't know where your current position on that is. If this will be an opportunity to cut people.
Well, in truth, a lot of the studios have negotiated in their term deals 30, 60, 90-day force majeure stuff. So a lot of them they could have terminated 2-3 months ago. And they have already done that for a lot. But right now, I think what they're trying to do is they're doing the suspension with these big producers. These are considered big time front loaded producers. They're doing this to piss them off so that they go to the unions and say, strike a damn deal. You just cost us money. And guess what? The unions are going to look at them and say, you're the jerks that wouldn't hire the talent.
Right.
Get in the back of the line. Berlanti was well loved for a bit because he produced a lot of television shows. However, he never hired anyone with any real talent or skill for the shows he was putting together. And he's made a lot of enemies in the industry. I don't think anyone's going to be supporting him when he starts going to the unions and saying, hey, we should really come to a deal. They just they just suspended our deals, which means that they're only a hair away from terminating them. We better come to a deal or else you're not going to have work in the next quarter, in which case I think the WGA and even some of the talent is going to be like, yeah, no, not with you. Sorry, man. Like,
Yeah. Well, speaking of talentless hacks, that's our last story. Jimmy Fallon is the latest host to face toxic workplace allegations. Yeah, he's the new Ellen kids.
Wow.
If you guys heard about this.
In other news, Bruce
And it couldn't
Wayne
have
is
happened to a
Batman.
better man. So yeah, Jimmy Fallon is the latest television host to face toxic workplace allegations. His erratic behavior fostered an unhealthy environment behind the scenes of the Tonight Show. You're not gonna believe this shit.
Oh, I believe it already. I remember when
I mean,
it came up
what
by
are
Ellen
the
DeGeneres
allegations?
3 years
Throw it
ago.
at
I'm
me.
like, wow, imagine my shock.
Okay,
No,
so
another one
Rolling
comes up in the
Stone
report.
did this expose. And the employees described the uncertainty as to whether Fallon would come to work cheerful or friendly or belligerent and mean. They would call these good days and bad days, according to the Rolling Stone article, which would affect how everybody would behave in the office. Writers revealed degrading feedback from the host on their jokes. Ugh, lame. What's going on with you? You've outdone yourself. And some staffers recalled witnessing him scold or belittle crew members. Tabloid rumors have long alleged Fallon has a problem with alcohol, though he denied it. Some of his employees who spoke to Rolling Stone alleged witnessing appear inebriated or smelling of alcohol on his breath on several occasions in 2017, 19, and 20. Employees said that Fallon's behavior seemed to be dependent on if he appeared to be hungover from the night before.
So this is pretty soft. It's like he's just making
Just
it
wait,
an
it gets
unsafe
better.
space.
It gets better. This is funny. The show also suffered from high turnover in upper level staff. They had 9 different showrunners over the course of 9 years. That's a different showrunner every single year. Employees alleged that the showrunners, too, were often bullies, were just eating a lot today and not caring about what we look like. One reportedly said to staffers, these whistleblowers say they found no recourse with human resources. One staffer was even privy to emails between HR and the showrunner where the HR representative degenerated the employee to their boss. Or denigrated, sorry, not degenerated, Jesus. They are the worst bosses I've ever had in my life. They use the position of power to bully and treat the staff that way. And the network is aware of how they treat people. They not only continue to enable, but reward it. One ex-employee said many attested to their mental health deteriorating, with 3 claiming to have experienced suicidal ideation as a result of the job. Mentally, I was in the lowest place of my life. I didn't want to live anymore. I thought about taking my own. Yeah. I'm not going to say that much more.
See, this is reflecting worse on the staffers that they're hiring than the actual.
Well, it is. It's all.
Were they being
the same room.
overworked, or were they just like being?
There's also a
berated?
cry room.
Yeah,
There's a cry room. They don't know if I don't think they
had a cry room.
They had a fucking cry room. They also the one that stuck out to me was, and they don't even have it in here, which is funny. The one time they said he was so drunk that he crossed out a joke on one of the pads, and then he didn't remember crossing it out, and he was accusing one of the other staff members of doing it. So his alcoholism had really gotten bad. To me, it's like just a mixture of both a bad leader, hiring bad people.
I would say this: when you have 9 showrunners turnover in 9 years, that means that the showrunner is probably frustrated with the fact that they had an incompetent staff.
Yeah.
And also a host
exactly.
Again, Jimmy Fallon is notorious for never being able to last through a sketch with a straight face. He was for some reason, a favorite of Lorne Michaels. Nobody knows why. He never should have been on that show. He brought nothing to it.
Yeah.
But that it just like with Pete Davidson, if you are in favor with Lorne Michaels, you will have a career, come hell or high water. Won't be great, but you will have one. But it just sounds like when you have that many people leaving or turnover with regards to showrunners on a hit late night show, and by hit it's hit for NBC because it's legacy. That's a really big problem, because usually average well, it depends. With Johnny Carson, he had a number of showrunners, but they were all really great comedians that got their own television pilot. That's why they left. They didn't leave because they didn't want to stop working for Johnny.
Yeah, and the same
That's
thing kind of
because they
happened to a
actually
lot of
got an
SNL
opportunity.
alum. Yeah.
In this case here, it doesn't look like we had 9 hit shows that occurred over the 9 years of Jimmy Fallon hosting The Tonight Show. If anything, there was a steady decline in that, which means that they didn't like working with a staff that were essentially whiny little children. I mean, if someone says my joke is lame, I'm like, you know what? You're probably right. Let me see if I can work on that.
Look, yeah.
That's a lot hard to do, man.
Softest insult you can get.
Could they be a little easier on people? Maybe. You're not wrong, Script. I see it on both ends here, but here's the kicker of the whole thing. Jimmy has not denied any of these accusations at all. In fact, he's owned them and apologized to the Tonight Show staff. Let's just come out here before the show. Yeah.
Well, that's
he offered
I don't
a mea culpa to his staff, and I don't know who he got to write it, but they should be a scab now.
No, publicist is not part of the WGA.
I'm joking. His quote goes, and he did this over on like a conference call, I guess, is what it sounds like. I'm sorry if I embarrassed you. I never set out to create that type of atmosphere at the show, referring to a toxic workplace. I think sometimes I'm working with the best of the best. You guys are the top of the game. There are things I've done in the past that are embarrassing, but I never mistreated anybody, he told the staff, according to the call. I want this show to be fun. It should be inclusive for everybody. It should be funny. It should be the best show, the best people. I just wanted to say I miss you guys. So he didn't exactly own it all, and he did pass a lot of the buck off.
It sounds like it was a scripted response.
It does.
It includes the word inclusive.
Yeah, as soon as you
the
add
fact that it's public, exactly,
point,
Nick.
Yep.
Yeah.
I don't buy this now anymore. Right when I was close, I'm like, I don't know what to make of this. Now I know what to make of this. It does say it's a fake apology.
It does say I never mistreated anybody. Which is
well, and that's true.
There's no
if you go with the accusations,
there's
he
no
technically
allegations.
Never really did. Yeah.
Yeah.
Being a jerk is not necessarily mistreating somebody. I mean, you could. There's a fine line there. You could say, yeah, you shouldn't be talking about somebody's weight or how they're dressed necessarily at work. But if they're not dressed to be at work, which that one sounded like, I mean, Script. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. A lot of these places run like an office. They kind of expect you to at least hold somewhat to those standards. I mean, not all the time is going to be tie and jacket, I get that, but they don't expect you to come in dressed in like sweats and shit, I'm assuming.
Oh no, you can. And the reason is the writer's room, especially in California, dress as terrible as you can so you don't get mugged on the way to work.
Well, this is New York. This is not California.
With New York, usually as long as you're covering your privates, you're pretty much fine. I've done some writing workshops at Rockefeller Center. Everybody dresses casually.
Okay, well, if that's the case, then they must not have been wearing much of anything or something they shouldn't have been wearing for somebody to say that.
That sounds like a heck of a workplace.
Yeah, like the only people that dress really well are the executives and the pages. That's what I noticed. Like everybody was as casual as can be because you want to be comfortable while you're working, and there's nothing wrong with that. The only time you'd ever had to dress up was if you were audience in the show, going to pitch something in any of the executive offices, or you're doing some sort of press junket across the street in any one of the television morning shows. Overall, it's like, yeah, you can wear sweatshirt, hoodie, t-shirt, torn t-shirt, or what have you. Just don't smell bad. Cover up your privates, and if that. It's just the way it is. It's like, again, I have met some people that are like have tens of millions of dollars in their bank account, I met them in a wife beater with cigarette burn holes in it. And it's like, what the hell is this? And it's like, that's just how it is. They only dress up when they have to. It's a very peculiar industry. A lot of these people don't even own a lot of the clothes they wear when you see them in public. It's all wardrobe. Just how it is. It's not glitz and glamour, even though it is presented that way. It's really just you're burnt out all the time for a lot of people. And that's why cocaine is so popular in Hollywood.
I love cocaine.
Michael Caine. Yeah, he's great.
I don't really love
Michael
cocaine.
Cocaine.
Like cocaine.
Listen, nothing freaked them out
It
more.
was
is
a
the
roll
fact
the size
that I
of a
could-
tangerine.
Nothing freaked them out more is the fact that I could drink tons and not get hungover the next day and be up at like 7 a.m. and in the office and think before.
That's
all
because
of
you're
them slumped in.
Canadian.
Pretty much, yeah.
It's about the
And-
same as being from Wisconsin.
It was just like they were shocked. I mean, one that listen, it was a hard thing I had to learn my first year out in LA, not really a year, but like first summer. Is that I dressed nice, and then you get someone that comes up to you and says, give me your wallet. Luckily, they didn't have any weapons on them, so I just scoffed and pushed them aside as I continued. But I was told later on, it's like, yeah, don't dress so nice. If you have tattered, ripped jeans or something, bring spare clothes, a nice thing in a bag if you want, and change when you get here, but not when you're on the street, or whether you're walking, taking a cab or an Uber or anything like that. Just don't look too nice. Try and blend in, and you'll make it to and from work a lot quicker and safer.
There you go.
You know,
And that's words of wisdom from Script Doctor. All right. And I think we've actually managed to get ahead of ourselves.
Wow.
So yeah, unless there was
Very
anything
good.
else you guys wanted to talk about.
No, I mean I'm all good. Obviously, I'll be on Thursday Night Throwdown in an hour, Comics Division, which I'm sure will be good.
What's the topics?
Oh,
I couldn't even find it to attach it to the stream,
yeah,
so
I don't I
me see
got
if
the
it's up
stream.
now.
I'll send you the stream.
Alright.
I do have that, so I got something for a wonderful Midnight's Edge After Dark audience. Which to all of you, thank you for being here and listening to us have a engaging conversation. All right, Katam, it is in the private chat.
Yeah, it's not coming up.
I got you, bro. I got you.
All right. So yeah, you should see me and sounds like Nick there.
Yes,
Anything else you want to plug, Nick?
Yeah, I posted a video earlier today on
Nice.
Comic Legend, Jim Steranko, and I think it's
Mm.
definitely worth
Nice.
a listen. It's only 5 minutes, and it's not what you expect, but it's absolutely very entertaining. It's a nice read through about something that happened recently with Mr. Steranko. So it's a little a little wholesome, entertaining video. Check that out. Next week, Toxic Tuesday,
Cool.
Jackie Chan police story. Comic Shop Talk will be off tomorrow. We'll be back next week. And yeah, I'll have another video or two out next week as well. Yeah, great to be here. Thanks for having me, Tom. Great to hang out with you, Script, Claudia, and Cece, and have good discourse conversation. And chat, thanks for listening to us. You are all awesome. And thank you to our mods for plugging our socials and our channels. You all have a great night. Hope to see some of you at TNT. And for those who watch the Clubhouse, stick with the Clubhouse. Thank you.
Awesome sauce. And Script, what you got going on?
Well, I'm probably gonna be working on another article to help writers with dialogue. I have been talking to a number of screenwriters trying to find a very reasonable workaround to doing some screenplay reviews, because you need permission in order to do that. And with the writer's strike, it's been really hard to secure that at times. So I'm trying to find other ways around that on Patreon. And outside of that, yeah, just follow me over on Twitter. And if you guys, if you want to kind of stick it to the industry a little bit, go check out friend of the channel Tom Conkle's Indiegogo for Island in the Stars. Show him some love and support over there, because that's if you want to see a good movie.
Mentioning that Script.
A movie that I have read the script and I know the cast involved, and I even have spoken to some of the cast that might be involved.
Ooh.
And I'm not going to spoil who those names are, but yeah, go show some support over there.
No
because,
script.
It'd be great.
I'm glad you
Baby,
mentioned
when
that
I met
because
you weren't from this earth.
They've already passed 75 backers and are over 14%
Whoa,
funded.
nice.
There's another 30 odd days left, so get in now. Perks are awesome. The access you're going to have during production is going to be really great once you hit a certain tier, of course. So check it out.
Yeah, folks, we know
remember
the
stars.
audience
That
and
is what you
commentators.
are.
We talk about we want a solution to the problem. I'd say this is a way of saying let's put our best foot forward and contribute to that, because obviously Tom Conkle is a guy with credibility, and he's not going to try to steer you the wrong way. He's going to put his heart into it. So, and best luck to everyone involved in the project. I really hope it succeeds. I mean, the new ideas got to start somewhere, and this is
give him some money, so maybe he needs me to do like a weird alien voice or something.
Oh, I'd pay good money on that alone.
Oh, yeah.
Wonky Chewbacca.
At the very least, maybe a trailer voice, do a trailer voice.
Trailer voice is easy. Yeah. You should give me, I can do that just to help sell it. Get in on the ground floor now.
Yeah.
Be a producer.
And
Stuff like
be
that.
a pirate as well on a wanted poster. That's pretty cool.
Arr.
Me matey. All right. Kalabby, what you got going on?
Well, I'm just about right at an hour of the clubhouse. We'll be in session with my wonderful first officer, Raquel, and of course our great chief engineer, Mark D. And I have some doing it's our last week reviewing UFO, the last episode. We'll be sad to see that go. We've been really enjoying that. And we review a Tales of Tomorrow episode, we review a UFO episode, and we review a Star Trek comic. So all that and much geekery is that more than that. So we have a great time there, folks. If you have not been there, we talk a lot of Star Trek and a lot of other in comics, and we just mix it all up. It's our clubhouse after all. Tomorrow night, my good buddy J-Man on his great channel, I'm reviewing Jack Kirby's Fourth World with him and my good buddy Sean. We've been having a lot of fun doing that. And I'm usually there with the Nick and the gang, but they won't be there tomorrow night for his great comic shop talk on Friday night, but it'll be back the week after that. And Saturday night, Star Trek's the big one, of course, where we got 4 more episodes of Star Trek Season 2, Star Trek Voyager, and our ongoing mission to review all of real Star Trek, 1966 through 2005. The only Trek that matters. And thanks for having me. Tom, I appreciate it. This is Mark D with the C's Geekery, by the way, on Sunday night. I should have mentioned that, 11:30 Central, 11:30 Eastern, sorry. So, but thanks for having me, Tom. Great to see you, my good friends on the panel, and our good friends out there in the chat. Trek on, my friends, and clobber on.
Thank you very much. And CC, what you got going on?
I'd love to plug the caretaker of this campground. But besides that, she's really hot. Tomorrow night is the community block party. It's the regular Friday night karaoke, but there's going to be 8 channels simulcasting the stream. So much bigger crowd, much bigger rotation, lots of talent. People you won't usually see on the regular Friday night show. So come out and check that out if you'd like. It's a 6-hour stream, 5 p.m. to 11 p.m. Pacific time, or 8 p.m. to 2 a.m. Eastern.
Nice.
That's it.
Awesome. And yeah, like I said before, you should be able to find me later on Thursday Night Throwdown. Other than that, morning show tomorrow. So thank you very much, everybody. Check out our sponsor, and we will see you soon.
Excuse me, ma'am. No porn at the bar.
Oh, it's okay. I'm transgender.
Oh, I had no idea. Do whatever you want all the time.
I got molested in the little boy's room.
Wrong one.